I don't know, guys. Are you still there? I may have hit the wrong button. All right, if you are still there, let's go ahead and jump into it. Taking a real quick look. In 324 BC, Alexander's lifelong friend and second in command, Hephaestion, died from a fever. Hephaestion had been Alexander's best friend growing up. I mean, they were as close as they could be. When growing up, Alexander compared Hephaestion to Achilles, his best friend, and they played almost a game as if they were so Hephaestion and Alexander were best friends. I mean, they were as close as any friends could be. This is almost in a direct reference to Achilles and his best friend, Patroclus. That was Achilles' best friend in the Iliad. And so these two friends are as close as they can be. And so when Hephaestion dies, Alexander is just inconsolable. There's nothing anyone can do to cheer him up. He doesn't want to be cheered up. He is so upset he slaughters an entire tribe, kind of as a sacrifice to his brother. Or to his friend. He kills the doctor that was supposed to save his life. The manes and tails of all the horses in the empire, they were cut off as a sign of mourning. Alexander refused to promote anyone else to Hephaestion's position. So much so that his cavalry without a commander. He wouldn't eat or drink, and he declared a period of mourning throughout the empire. This is something that you do for a king. This is something you do for a very, 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 very crucially important person. Hephaestion, he's Alexander's best friend, but he's not that person. And so the rites that he does for Hephaestion is just unbelievable. Historically, it just was never done, or it shouldn't have been done. That truly shows us how much hurt and pain Alexander was feeling with the loss of his best friend. And I think that is one of the greatest stories about the guy. I mean, and then we look at the tomb where Alexander is buried, and or Hephaestion is buried, and the elaborate work that was done in it is just inspiring. It's just awe-inspiring for sure. All right, well, good afternoon, Carly Dillon. Welcome. Any questions, guys? This is Mr. Candler in the afternoon. I'm here to help you with history. No, you can't say the secret word. It's a secret word for a reason, because it's secret. It loses its magic if you say it. Only Mr. Candle is allowed to put it in print. And then it's magical. Yeah, the next slide, absolutely. Alexander's final act. In May of 323 BC, Alexander invited several of his top commanders to Babylon to discuss expanding his empire. The next day, Alexander fell into a fever, and for that fever, he fought for 14 days until he was finally beaten by the illness on June the 11th, 323 BC, at the age of 32. Um, what's interesting is that Alexander may have been assassinated. Somebody may have poisoned him. Um, as soon as he's had this kind of party with these top commanders, he becomes ill. So there is some hints here that maybe he was poisoned by somebody. At the same time, that was often what people said when a person of Alexander's stature died. They would claim that this person was poisoned. Is it always true? No, not at all. But there could be some truth behind it. We know for sure that we don't know for sure why he died, but there's other ideas there as well, like a disease called malaria. Malaria is really, really bad. Alexander could have had that as well. Any more questions? Questions? Uh-oh. Maybe crashing. Oh, we're back. All right. Any questions, guys? Questions, comments, or concerns? All right, guys and gals, any questions? You have no more questions, Soraya? All right. Anybody else? Questions, comments, concerns, complaints. All right, you understand everything. That is fantastic. I wish I understood everything. Maybe one day. When am I going to put your grades in Power School? I always update Power School on Friday. So you should see your updated grades Friday. So I'll be spending my time tomorrow making sure all of those grades are in. All right? How about that? Next project. Next project, Carly, will probably be in the next couple weeks. I got to figure out what exactly I want you guys to do for me and how I want it to be and what I want to cover. But my plan for sure is to really develop a cool project for you guys again. I think you definitely gonna do another battlefield project, maybe another two of those. But I also kind of want to go over some different stuff as well. I was thinking about a ancient road trip one, where I'll give you guys a budget and you're going to go visit some ancient sites, and you guys are going to have to find hotels and flights and get all that information down. And I'll give you a certain amount of money to do your whole trip. So it'll be like, okay, you're going to travel to, let's say you travel to Rome and you want to see the Colosseum, right? You're going to have to figure out how to get to Rome and how, once you're in Rome, to get to the Colosseum and where you're going to stay. and what else you're going to do in the town, things like that. No, I'm not going to pay you. I'm going to give you fake money to do the trip with, right? So I'm going to say, okay, you got $10,000, and then you got to plan the trip. I'm not going to give you actual money. Mr. Cantaloupe can't afford that. No, just pretend money. But you have to like pick out foods that are culturally important, and you have to go see some natural sites as well as tourist sites or historic sites. Hold on, guys, 1 second. Yeah, doing good. How are you? I hit the switch, the reset, and you kind of hear it. Yeah, then it turns off. I have I'm on a live class, so I'll be in and out. Yep. Alright guys, I'm back getting some help with my garbage disposal. It is a lot of work, but it's kind of a cool end of the year project for you guys. Really wanted to give you guys an exciting project where you can kind of take everything you've learned and pick a place you'd like to go visit. So you can think about what civilization you've learned about means the most to you. Maybe it's China, maybe it's Rome, maybe it's Greece. You get to make that decision. Well, that was a promising noise. Alright, any questions? That'd be kind of an end of the year project. Alright, any questions, comments, concerns, complaints? Anything I can help you with outside of that?
It's just bottle caps, that's all.
Oh my lord.
That's it.
Hey, I do have a question for you while I got you. I have a broken light bulb in the socket. I have two of them. I have one in the, when I moved in, I had one in the storage closet. And then this one is down. I wasn't going to do a potato thing, but I wanted to get clearance before I did that. I can put it in the help ticket.
Can I come back tomorrow for that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I got a couple of other weeks I got it.
Yeah, no, your thing, yeah. I just wanted to
No,
let you know about it.
Tomorrow.
Okay.
Come back tomorrow.
Yeah.
I just gotta cut the power. I don't wanna.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I understand.
I appreciate it, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm back, guys. You no more questions? Come on, guys. You need questions. Bring them. Well, if you don't have any more questions, we can start chapter 3 of The Hobbit. Are you ready? Chapter 3, A Short Rest. You heard every word I said? Oh, to my maintenance guy? They did not sing or tell stories that day, even though the weather improved, nor the next day, nor the day after. They had begun to feel that danger was not far away on either side. They camped under the stars, and their horses had more to eat than they had. For there was plenty of grass, for there was not much in their bags, even with what they got from the trolls. One morning they forded a river at a wide, shallow place, full of the noise of stones and foam. The far bank was steep and slippery. When they got to the top of it, leading their ponies, they saw that the great mountains had marched down very near to them. Already they seemed only a day's easy journey from the feet of the nearest Dark and dreary it looked, though there were patches of sunlight on its brown sides, and behind its shoulders the tips of snow peaks gleamed. "Is that the mountain?" asked Bilbo in a solemn voice, looking at it with round eyes. He had never seen a thing that looked so big before. "Of course not," said Balin. "That is only the beginning of the Misty Mountains, and we have got to go through or over or under those somehow before we can come into the wild land beyond. And it is a deal far away even from the other side of them, to the lonely mountain in the east where Smaug lives on our treasure." "Oh," said Bilbo, and just at that moment he felt more tired than he ever remembered feeling before. He was thinking once again of his comfortable chair before the fire in his favorite sitting room, and his hobbit hole, and of the kettle singing, not for the last time. Now Gandalf led the way. "We must not miss the road, or we shall be done for," he said. "We need food for one thing, and rest is in reasonable safety. Also, it is very necessary to tackle the Misty Mountains by the proper path, or else you will get lost in them, and have to come back and start at the beginning again if you ever get back at all." They asked him where he was making for, and he answered, "You are to come to the very edge of the wild, as some of you may know. Hidden somewhere ahead of us, the fair valley of Rivendell, where Elrond lives in the last homely house. I sent a message by my friends, and we are expected." That sounded nice and comfortable, but they had not yet got there, and it was not so easy as it sounds to find the last homely house of the west of the mountains. There seemed to be no trees and no valleys and no hills to break the ground in front of them, only one vast slope going slowly up and up to meet the feet of the nearest mountain. A wide land, the color of heather and crumbling rock, with patches and slashes of grass and moss green showing where their water might be. Morning passed. Afternoon came. But in all the silent waste there was no sign of any dwelling. They were growing anxious, for they saw now that the house might be hidden almost anywhere between them and the mountains. They came on, unexpected valleys narrow with steep sides that opened suddenly at their feet, and looked down, surprised to see trees below them, and running water at the bottom. There were gullies, and they could almost leap over, but very deep with waterfalls in them. There were dark ravines that one could neither jump over nor climb into. There were bogs, some of them green, pleasant places to look at, with flowers growing bright and tall, but the pony that walked there, with a pack on its back, would never come out again. I guess it was indeed a much wider land from the ford to the mountain than you ever would have guessed. Bilbo was astonished. The only path was marked with white stones, some of which were small, and others were half covered with moss or heather. Altogether it was very slow business following the track, even guided by Gandalf, who seemed to know his way about pretty well. His head and beard wagged this way and that as he looked for the stones, and they followed his lead, but they seemed no nearer to the end of the stretch when the day began to fail. Tea time had long gone by, and it seemed supper time would soon do the same. There were moths fluttering about, and the light became very dim, for the moon had not risen. Bilbo's pony began to stumble over roots and stones. They came to the edge of a steep fall, and the ground so suddenly that Gandalf's horse nearly slipped down the slope. "Here it is at last," he called, as the others gathered round him and looked over the edge. They saw the valley far below. They could hear the voice of hurrying water in a rocky bed at the bottom. The scent of trees was in the air, and there was a light on the valley side across the water. Bilbo never forgot the way they slithered and slipped in the dust down the steep zigzag path and into the secret valley of Rivendell. The air grew warmer as they got lower, and the smell of the pine trees made him drowsy, so that every now and again he nodded and nearly fell off or bumped his nose on the pony's back. The spirits rose as they went down. The trees changed to beech and oak, and there was a comfortable feeling into the twilight. The last green had almost faded out of the grass when they came at last to an open glade not far above the banks of the stream. It smells like elves, thought Bilbo, and he looked up at the stars. They were burning bright and blue. Just then came a burst of song like laughter in the trees. "Oh, what are you doing, and where are you going? Your pony's new shoeing, the river is flowing. Oh, tra-la-la-la-la, here down in the valley. Oh, what are you seeking, and where are you making? The trees are reeking, the bannocks are baking. Oh, tra-la-la-la-la-la-la, the valley is jolly, ha-ha. Oh, where are you going, with beards all the wagging? No knowing, no knowing what brings Mr. Baggins and Balin and Dwalin down at the valley in June, ha. Oh, will you be staying, or will you be flying? Your ponies are staying, the daylight is dying. To fly would be folly, to stay would be jolly, and listen and hark to the end of the dark to our tune, ha-ha." So they laughed and sang in the trees, and pretty fair nonsense, I dare say you think it. Not that they would care, they only laughed all the more if you told them so. They were elves, of course. Soon Bilbo caught a glimpse of them as the darkness opened. He loved elves when he seldom met them, but he was a little frightened of them too. Dwarves don't get on well with them. Even decent enough dwarves like Thorin and his friends think them foolish, which is a very foolish thing to think, or get annoyed with them, for some elves tease them and laugh at them, and most of all at their beards. It's not nice to laugh at beards. "Well, well," said a voice. "Just look, Bilbo the Hobbit on a pony. My dear, isn't it delicious? Most astonishing, wonderful." Then off went into another song as ridiculous as the one I have written down in full. At last one, a tall young fellow, came out of the trees and bowed to Gandalf and to Thorin. "Welcome to the valley," he said. "Thank you," said Thorin, a bit gruffy, but Gandalf was already off his horse and among the elves, talking merrily with them. "You're a little out of your way," said the elf, "that is. making for the only path across the water, and to the house beyond. We will set you right. But you had best get on foot until you are over the bridge. You're going to stay a bit and sing with us, or will you go straight on? Supper is preparing over there, he said. I can smell the wood fires for the cooking. Tired as he was, Bill would have liked to stay a while. Elvish singing is not a thing to miss in June under the stars. Not if you care for such things. Also, he'd have liked to have a few private words with these people that seemed to know his name and all about him, although he had never seen them before. He thought their opinion of his adventure might be interesting. Elves know a lot, and are wondrous folk for news, and know what is going on among the peoples of the land as quick as the water flows or quicker. But the dwarves were all for supper as soon as possible, just then, and would not stay. On they all went, leading their ponies till they were brought to a good path, and so at last to the very brink of the river. It was flowing fast and noisily, as mountain streams do of a summer's evening, when the sun has been down all day on the snow far up above. There was only a narrow bridge of stone without a parapet, as narrow as a pony could walk on, and over they had to go, slow and careful, one by one, each leading his pony by the bridle. The elves had brought bright lanterns to the shore, and they sang a merry song, and the party went across. "Don't dip your beard in the foam, father," they cried to Thorin, who was bent almost onto his hands and knees. It was long enough without watering it. "Mind, Bilbo doesn't eat all the cakes," they called. "He is too fat to get through the keyholes yet." "Hush, hush, good people, and good night," said Gandalf, who came last. "Valleys have ears, and some elves have over-merry tongues. Good night." And so at last they all came to the last homely house, and found its doors flung wide. Now it is a strange thing, but things are good to have the days that are good. Now it is a strange thing, but things that are good to have, and days that are good to spend, are soon told about, and not much to listen to. While things that are uncomfortable, palpitating, and even gruesome, may make a good tale and take a deal of telling anyway. They stayed long in the good house, 14 days at least, and they found it hard to leave. Bilbo would gladly have stayed there forever and ever, even supposing a wish would have taken him right back to his hobbit hole without trouble. Yet there is little to tell about their stay. The master of the house was an elf friend, one of those people whose fathers came to the strange stories before the beginning of history. The wars of the evil goblins and the elves and the first men in the north. In those days of our tale, there were still some people who had both elves and heroes of the north for ancestors, and Elrond, the master of the house, was their chief. He was as noble as fair as an elf lord, as strong as a warrior, as wise as a wizard, and as venerable as a king of dwarves, and in his kind as summer. He comes into many tales, but his part in Bilbo's great adventure is only a small one, though important, you will see, if we ever get to the end of it. His house was perfect, without whether you liked food, or sleep, or work, or storytelling, or singing, or just sitting and thinking best, or a pleasant mixture of them all. Evil things did not come into that valley. I wish I had more time to tell you even a few of the tales, or one or two of the songs that they heard in that house, all of them. The ponies as well grew refreshed and strong in the few days there. Their clothes were mended as well, and their bruises, their tempers, and their hopes. Their bags were filled with food and provisions, light to carry but strong to bring them over the mountain passes. Their plans were improved with the best advice, so the time came to Midsummer Eve, and there they were to go on again with the early sun of midsummer morning. Elrond knew all about runes of every kind. That day he looked at the swords they had brought from the troll's lair, and he said, "These are not troll make. They are old swords, very old swords of the high elves of the west, my kin. They were made in Gondolin for the goblin wars. They must have come from a dragon's horde or goblin plunder. For dragons and goblins destroyed the city many years ago. This Thorin, the runes name Orcust, the goblin cleaver, and the ancient tongue of Gondolin. It was a famous blade. This, Gandalf, was Glamdring, Foehammer, that the king of the Gondor once wore. Keep them well." "Whence did the trolls get them, I wonder?" said Thorin, looking at his sword with new interest. "I could not say," said Elrond, "but one may guess that your trolls had plundered some other plunders, or come on the remains of old robberies in some hole in the mountains of old. I have heard that there are still forgotten treasures of old to be found in the deepest caverns and mines of Moria since the dwarf and goblin war. Thorin pondered these words. I will keep the sword in honor, he said. May it soon cleave goblins once again. A wish that is likely to be granted soon enough in the mountains, said Elrond. But show me your map. He took it and gazed long at it, and he shook his head. For he did not altogether approve of dwarves and their love of gold. He hated dragons and their cruel wickedness, and he grieved to remember the ruin of the town of Dale and its merry bells, and the burned banks of the bright river running. The moon was shining in a broad silver crescent. He held the map where the light shone through it. What is this? He said. There are moon letters here, beside the plain runes, which say 5 feet high the door, and 3 may walk abreast. What are moon letters? Asked the hobbit, full of excitement. He loved maps, as I've told you before, and also he liked runes and letters and cunning handwriting, though when he wrote himself it was a bit thin and spidery. Moon letters are moon runes, but you cannot see them, said Elrond, not when you look straight at them. They can only be seen when the moon shines behind them, and what is more, with the more cunning sort. It must be the moon of the same shape and season as the day when they were written. The dwarves invented them and wrote them with silver pens, as your friend could tell you. These must have been written on a midsummer's eve in the crescent moon, a long while ago. What do they say? Asked Gandalf and Thorin together, a bit vexed perhaps that even Elrond should have found this out first, though really there is no way to have been known a chance. They would have had another until goodness knows when. Stand by Grey Stone when the thrush knocks, read Elrond. At the setting sun on the last day of Durin's day will shine upon the keyhole. Durin, said Thorin. He was the father of fathers of the eldest race of dwarves and longbeards. He was my first ancestor. I am his heir. Then when is Durin's day? What is Durin's day? Asked Elrond. The first day of the dwarves' new year, said Thorin. As all well should know, the first day of the last moon of autumn, or the threshold of winter. We still call it Durin's day, with the last moon of autumn and the sun and the sky together. But this will not help us much, I fear, for it passes over our skill in those days to guess when such a time will come again. That remains to be seen, said Gandalf. Is there any more riding? None to be seen by this moon, said Elrond, and he gave the map back to Thorin. And he went down to the water to see what the elves dance and sing upon the midsummer's eve. The next morning, the midsummer's morning, as fair and fresh as could be, dream blue skies and never a cloud, and the sun dancing on the water. Now they rode away amid songs of farewell and good speed, and their hearts ready for more adventures, and with a knowledge of the road they must follow over the misty mountains to the land below. Alright guys, that is chapter 3. I will see you all later. Have a great day.